Oh, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back into Snow The Goalie, the Only Flyers podcast, the People's podcast, Players podcast, Prognosticators podcast, Pedialyte podcast, the Only Flyers podcast. We're back. It's been a few weeks. I feel like it's the early days of Snow The Goalie where we do an episode and then it's a few weeks and then there's one and then there's another. But as somebody said earlier today, they said you guys did like 300 episodes this season. Is anybody really that upset if you take some time? Apparently the answer was yes. People were upset. They've been tweeting nonstop. Anthony says it's not his fault. Yet here we are. And now he's like gallivanting through Citizens Bank Park. He will be here, but we're giving him a hard time. But Bundy, it's so good to see you. It's been far too long. I will tell you that your memory has been living in our house. Every time we see our baby walking around, now he's walking. Big Dino, as you like to call him, has become a thing in our house. So, yeah, Big Dino. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I've been really busy with regular work and watching the playoffs pretty much every night, both sports. I find the Phillies just look like they're just never going to lose again. So they've actually become boring because, we don't like anyone that just wins every game every night. Mm-hmm. So let's wait till there's a little bit more dysfunction there when the summer months come. But it's been good. I've really active a lot in the community, getting out there and still trying to deliver my message of hope and recovery. And but it's been good. We got a lot to talk about. I'm sure it's going to be a fun episode. I actually, if somebody could. Andrew Fopp. Yeah, I'll fill you in on that too. I forgot what the hell I was going to say. If somebody, the one ESPN, I think it's ESPN. Mm-hmm. Who the fuck is the broadcaster that just screams the whole fucking game? He's like yelling at the audience. I had finally said, "Fuck this! I got to turn it down because this was just out of control." He's like, "Get the fuck out!" And I'm sitting there. I'm like, Jesus, fuck! You don't have to scream. Call the game. Let it breathe.
That Bundy bomb was so big that we brought in the third member of our crew, Anthony SanFilippo.
Holy fuck, I thought that was Uncle Fester.
That is a cleanly shaven head if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, not bad.
Holy shit. Dude, if there's ever a time to get a baseball hat on that thing, it's now.
Thanks.
He's getting ready for the hair transplant. He's going to come back looking like Rob Blagojevich. Remember him?
You know what? The best part is Anthony. Anthony's one of my really, truly great friends, too. We'll bust each other's chops. But, after that fucking Tom Brady roast last week, everything's off the table now. We've restored ourselves to society. It's all the woke bullshit is over with. All the cancellation, it's done. Thank you, Tom Brady and Kevin Hart, for restoring order to the world.
So just to kind of give you kind of an update on why
we're going to get whispering Anthony in the press box. Oh, I don't want to disrupt anybody.
You're not going to get
the dulcet tones of Anthony SanFilippo.
I just don't want to bother everybody talking about hockey in a baseball press box. That's all. It's a little bit different. It's quiet right now because there's nothing happening. There's nobody in the stadium yet. So Maria's not happy with the haircut either. But I explained to her that I timed this out perfectly for the wedding, so that all I will need by the time that the wedding comes around is a slight little trim so that it looks good for the wedding in September. So it's perfectly timed.
You do realize that you can get a couple of haircuts. You don't have to go all the way down to get it back. Barbers do actually have multiple heads they can put on the trimmer so that they can cut it a little bit shorter.
Who has time for all that? Just go once, shave it all off. It'll be the summer cut. It'll be great, and be ready to go by September.
And I guess here's the real question: with the wedding only a few months away, does the carpet match the drapes? Anyway, let's cue the ad for Manscaped. All right, so let's get into some stuff here. I'm glad to see you guys, and I talked to you a little bit earlier today on Crossing Broadcast. I know that you have an exciting thing coming up tomorrow on Crossed Up. You have a guest coming on that show. So for those who just can't get enough of Ant San Philly, he's got a nice interview coming up. I think that should be ready to go. I'm guessing by Friday night or Saturday. I know that you have Craig going down to film that.
Yeah,
so
I'm
might delay that episode.
The one thing I have to figure out with Bob is whether we're going to actually put that out as part of tomorrow's podcast or if we're going to save it for Mondays.
Okay.
To be determined, but it'll be either. Okay. Yeah, we're doing the interview tomorrow.
Okay, got it. Andrew's asking me to keep it PG. Did not have a problem with Bundy's F-bombs, but apparently my line was just too far, just too much. Scott also thinks that you have some waxed floors, Ant. So there you go. It's very good stuff. Anyway, let's get into, there are a lot of things going on in Flyers land. There are and there aren't. Bundy mentioned the playoffs. We'll get to that in a little bit. There are two big things that I think are probably worth diving into today. We want to thank everybody who's joining us now live on YouTube, on Facebook, X, and Instagram Live. If you're on YouTube and you're wondering why you can't comment, a lot of people can. We're trying this today. That if you want to comment on the video, you just have to subscribe. It's no cost. It's not a membership. We haven't rolled anything out like that. It's just like the video, subscribe to the channel, and you can comment on it. So if you haven't done so already, we're past that 3,000 subscriber thing, which we're really happy with. We want to continue to grow it. So if you can, hit a subscribe. And please hit the like button. We have seen that increasingly, not just on this channel, but on other channels. As you like videos while they're going on, it shows up in more people's feeds and on YouTube, so please do us a favor and hit the like. Two big things, guys. Some rumblings coming out of the team about how the season ended. And then the other thing is rumors around Matvei Michkov and about the possibility of him coming over sooner than expected. There were some interesting comments that came from his team in the KHL, from the chairman. Frank Saravalli put out some stuff. Where do you guys want to go first? Do you want to kind of do a little end of, like a little housekeeping note on the Flyers and how the locker room's feeling about the coach, perhaps? Or should we go with Matvei Michkov rumors? Where do you want to start? I'll throw it to you.
Anthony, why don't you take any Michkov? Like, Michkov, I think is, and you can fill me in, Ant. To me, I know they're trying to make something happen, but to me, it almost looks like they're wishing for it, the fan base, more than maybe there's going to be actual I don't know. That's why I'm saying to you, but it feels like I don't know. Like, we got a different story. He's coming. He's not. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that you're probably looking at a similar situation to what you had a year ago, last season, 5 months ago, not even 4 months ago, with Fedotov. And I think what you're going to see is probably he starts the year in Russia, and then once that season ends, they may let him out of that contract at that point, and you save a season of him having to play over there, and he can come over here, March of next year. I think that's a more likely scenario. Does that mean it's definite that he won't be here prior to that? No. I think that there's a lot of moving parts when these things happen. You have an American, North American agent. You have a Russian agent. You have, who can give them money, who cannot give them money. The teams can't actually communicate with one another. They're not allowed. That's against the rules. But agents can work for the player, on the behalf of the player, and talk to both sides. So it's kind of like bartering. There's obviously the geopolitical stuff too that you got to take into consideration. So there's a lot of moving parts. I do think that the reality of it is that it's more likely that he's available in March than he is for October. But I won't completely dismiss the possibility that he's here sooner.
I want to go to the comments, and it was originally Alex Appleyard. It's the one who found them, I guess, translated them, uncovered them. It was SKA chairman Medvedev who said that the Flyers want Michkov in the NHL. SKA have good relations with the Flyers front office. They will not violate his KHL contract. They're going to talk that St. Petersburg won't rule out letting Michkov go to the Flyers. Decision should be made no later than the end of June. Also said that he thinks that it's better for a guy like Michkov to leave like Ovechkin or Panarin. If he does leave, they would want to have a guarantee in the contract that he'd be returned to St. Petersburg if he doesn't make the NHL roster. They don't want him to go to the AHL. And also said that it wasn't worth talking about at the end of April, which is when these quotes came out. But he did offer some thoughts and some comments. So it's interesting in that, like, he kind of put this June timeline on it. it seems almost inconceivable that the Flyers are going to be able to get him to start the year. The contract, if I remember correctly, ends in the summer of 26, or is it the summer of 25? It's then of 26, right, where his contract runs out.
Michkov?
Yeah.
Yeah, he would have 2 more years over there.
So he would in theory, as it currently stands, be able to come over after the 25-26 season. If what you're kind of thinking, and if the Fedotov thing is kind of like the precedent that they've sort of set, possible he could get here at the end of the 24-25 season. It's interesting. It's certainly not something that anyone thought was in play realistically, but it almost feels like the Fedotov situation has kind of changed the potential of something like this going down. They do have good relations, and it's interesting. I don't know what the legality is of it would be, but the notion that like if he doesn't make the team, he would get returned back to St. Petersburg is interesting. I don't know how that would work, because you would think that he would have to break, or they'd have to terminate the end of that contract with the KHL in order for him to come stateside and be able to participate in training camp, correct? Or can he be under KHL contract and go through training camp?
Oh, no, that would never happen. Yeah, if he comes over here, he's here. Yeah, that would never happen. So
I'm just trying to understand from Medvedev's perspective how he envisions a scenario where they could allow him to potentially try to make the team, but if not, come back. That's the thing that I don't think there's really a precedent for. As we've discussed in depth on this show in the past, there is no longer that on the up and up kind of negotiation that can happen between an NHL team and KHL team. Comcast can't just throw a big check on the table publicly and say, here you go, we're buying out the end of his deal. Is it possible that maybe they could back channel something? Who knows? Who's to say? We certainly wouldn't. But it is interesting, guys. Bundy, just given like where this thing is, where the idea of a rebuild is, would you rather get Michkov over here a year sooner, or allow him to hopefully play another season in the KHL, hopefully for St. Petersburg, which is a better team than the one that he's been loaned out to for the last couple of years, and then have him come over when the end of his contract is set to expire?
You know what, Russ? I'm not one of those believers, like whatever the process is, if there's a way to fast track it, they should do it. I don't know a lot of the political landscape that goes on with it, but, Anthony probably is a lot more adept at it, but I don't really know necessarily how it's going to play out. But I would say the sooner you can get him here, the better it'll be. He can play in this league now. I mean, it's I don't need anyone to convince me differently. He'll play in the NHL right away. That's not an issue at all. So for me, or for looking at Danny and Jonesy, their thing will try to be to get that. I would assume to try to get him here too, because he'll end up helping the team. That's the way I look at it.
Now, I think we have to bring something else up that came out today. Actually, within the last hour, there's a report that
let's
Kolosov.
Let's pump the brakes on that.
Well, we have to.
You can say
we have to put it out that there is a report from BelarusHockey.com calling it an exclusive that Alexei Kolosov may return to Dynamo Minsk because he's having problems adapting to North America.
May is an interesting headline word that they use there. I have not translated it from. I guess is that in Cyrillic? I don't know. I have not been able to read it yet, and I have not been told this. I've not heard anything about this, so this would be brand new. I would caution that anybody get fired up about it. Even if he were to go back, I'm not certain that that's something that would mean that he will never play for the Flyers or never play in the Flyers organization. It could just mean there are guys that the Flyers have rights to players that are Russian players or Belarusian players for years before they ultimately come over to, or maybe they never come over. But the reality of it is that it doesn't completely abandon anything if in fact he does go back, and if in fact this one report is true. Again, I saw it. I sent a couple texts. I'm waiting to get a response because it just happened. But I say pump the brakes, hold on that before we go crazy that he's leaving the Flyers.
No, I'm sorry, Ant. We have to sound all the alarms here. This is just how things work.
Sound every alarm.
Okay, but let's say that it is him having a hard time adjusting. I mean, as the multilingual person here, like there is a difference between, and there can be a loss in translation of he's having a hard time adapting to the North American game, and he's having trouble adapting to like life in North America. These are two different things.
Mm-hmm. He only played a couple of games.
He was thrust into a pretty crazy position. End of a season, his season was over. Coming over here, there was no camp, right? There really wasn't regular practice time, and he was kind of thrust into it. I could see him maybe going home for part of the offseason or maybe for the whole offseason. Here's another question. Does the signing of Fedotov kind of change the calculus for this player? Like, does Kosov look at it and say, all right, there's no longer a legitimate chance, maybe in his mind, to dethroning a guy that was just given a multi-million-dollar contract, and he says, well, I'm 22, I can just go back, play abroad, and then maybe in a couple of years I swing back over. Like, is there anything to that?
I mean,
potentially.
Again, is there anything to it? I mean, again, we don't know. This is one report out of Belarus. I mean, is it possible that is that a scenario that you just thought up in the moment, and it could be that? Yeah, sure. But I can think up of, a dozen scenarios that it could be too, right? That and just say, oh yeah, well that makes sense. Oh well, so does that. Oh yeah, there could be that too. Like, I don't think this is something that we really dive into without any kind of background information. I think it's something where you're like, okay, I mean, it's out there. It's out of Belarus. So let's hold the phone for a second, and then let's look into it. And maybe the next time we get together, we have a little bit more detail about what exactly happened.
In fairness, Anthony DeMarco is also now speculating or putting out there that the Flyers are going to try to convince him to stay stateside. Just interesting.
Which is what I would expect. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say to you. Like, if he felt uncomfortable because he only came over here and played 2 games, maybe it was kind of a situation where it was like, hey, listen, we thrust you into a tough spot. It wasn't right. It wasn't like the best spot ever for you. We just wanted to see what you can do. Hang in there with us. Trust us. We have a much more long-term plan for you. You'll be a lot better off next season. Like they're gonna do the full court press if in fact that's the case. And that's why I said let's hold the phone. And especially when you see a headline that says he may do this. Well, is that news? Like, yeah, I may go get gas in my car on the way home. I may not, but is it news? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's crazy. Like, I think we got to be very, very careful with some of this stuff. And that's why I was trying to poo-poo it right off the bat.
Well, I knew one thing. When I got the fucking alert for Belarus Hockey Daily, I was all over it. I'll tell you what. When they fucking spew something, boys, it's real. All right? It's like Dickie. If Dickie Dunn wrote it, it must be true.
Bundy, let me ask you though, like in your career, when you have a guy who does come over from abroad, it doesn't mean like it doesn't have to be a guy who's like 22. Is being homesick if you're a European player? Like, did you run into that much with guys on teams in the past that it was an actual adjustment issue, or is it not really prevalent? Like, is this maybe an outlier?
No, I mean, I guess depending on how young you are, I would assume younger guys go, but you get nervous when they come over. But I think the biggest thing for them is really the language barrier. Mm-hmm. I really think that's probably the thing that they have to adjust more than anything. Their parents come over and visit. I'm trying to think of a young Russian that was over here. I mean, like Provorov was the one I could think of, but he was already over here for a few years before that. Like he had been North Americanized, if you can use that word. But yeah, he played in like Scranton. But his dad would come over. I don't necessarily know about that, Russ. Like I think so many guys now look after each other, the older players and stuff, and now the money's different. Like these guys have financial status as soon as they come in the league. So I don't know. That's a good question, but not one that's a looming one. They'll figure it out. They'll figure it out. It's nothing like it's like anybody else going anywhere away from home. You just got to adjust to it. It's like kids going away to college.
Yeah. Well, actually, I want to bring this up then because Bill Meltzer, friend of the show, tweets the following. He actually first quote tweeted the original report and said, after 3 weeks, But he says Kosov is under ELC to the Flyers. He was loaned to Dynamo, burning 1 year of the ELC for the 23-24 season, and this past season only, as far as Bill knows. Therefore, Flyers get to decide where he plays next season. They would have to agree to another loan. Why would they?
Right.
So there's Bill kind of also in his own way kind of refuting that report, if you want to call it that. But it is interesting, and I don't know, guys. Like I
don't know. This is why the reports, like, this is why I don't get involved in this kind of shit in the summer. I like worrying about what's on the team, and I know there's summer stuff, but it's like you get so dug in over a guy, like we don't even know who he's going to be for this team. I feel like we I know we have to speculate and give what we have, but I don't know what he's going to be. We could be talking about a guy who's in the East Coast League. Who knows, right? Like you just don't know. So that's why we always everyone gets into player stuff so often, and we judge about future predicaments that a lot of them just don't work out.
Yeah.
So we'll see though. But I'm with Bill. Like, why? First of all, I don't know if there's two sets of information going out. Bill's got his view, and I guess Anthony's got his too. But I don't know where that came from, because it looks like it's kind of like differing opinions on it. And I agree with Bill. Why would the Flyers lend him out? If they worked all year to try to get him here, you certainly want to at least see what that asset looks like in real time. And, in the middle of a hockey season in North America, to see what kind of a goalie he really is.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so I think we've now addressed Kolosov. We've addressed the potential of a Matvei Michkov early arrival. Let's get to the end of the Flyers season. We sort of on our own way did a postmortem on the team, but it was part of a very, very, very long episode that lives on YouTube, where we did the fantasy draft with Snyder Hockey. And we had a great time at that, by the way.
And we're struggling. We're struggling. I don't know why.
You mean our team, our fantasy team that you were very bullish on? Yes. Well,
we all were.
Well, one of us said, "Are we sure that we really want to go all in on the Oilers?" And well, that might not work out. We'll see. We'll see. By the way, we'll get to the playoffs in a little bit. Let's get to the end of the Flyers season, though.
Russ, I think the day that we did the show, just before I go, I think that was the day Sarah Valley had put out the information that he'd gotten. And we didn't have a lot of time to touch upon it. But when Frank came out end of the year talking about the locker room, I think that's where we were the day of the fantasy draft.
You're right. That is true. And I don't know if Ant has that at his fingertips, but Sarah Valley reported, having talked to some guys in the locker room, that they were very upset with the way that things went down at the end of the year. There were guys that were unhappy about the benching of Couturier, and that the end of year meetings that typically happen, I think Torts said publicly there were no exit meetings. It would seem highly unlikely that that's entirely true, that he wouldn't have at least met with the leadership core of the team, the newly appointed leadership core of the team, including like a Lawton, a Konechny, and a Couturier. I have to imagine that they did meet. Sarah Valley reporting nationally, though, that there were perhaps some issues or some not so thrilled veterans on the team with the way that the end of the season went down and the way that the Couturier benching went down. I don't find it entirely surprising. And to your point, like, it was about 3 weeks ago that we did that episode. But in the time that's happened and passed since then, have you guys gleaned anything that maybe either supports what Sarah Valley reported or refutes it? Like, have you guys been hearing anything about how things went down in that locker room around the Couturier benching and how the year ended?
No, I mean, I went on another podcast. I went on Nasty Knuckles.
Friend of a show.
Yeah, absolutely. Friends of the show.
Yep.
With Riley Cote and Derek Settlemeyer. And we talked about this a little bit. And, there's no doubt in my mind from people I've talked to that there was a real disappointment in what took place with Sean Couturier being benched by the coach, and it had a negative impact on that locker room. And then you couple that with the press conference after the Islanders game, when they fought back to tie it, even though they lose in overtime, but that they fight back and tie it, and he calls them soft. I think it was a situation where Torts maybe pushed too hard at that point. We sat there and gave the guy a lot of credit for coaching this team and how he did it for the first 5 months of the season. But when it came down to it at the end, there were a couple of buttons he probably should not have pushed, and I think it negatively impacted the locker room. And if you go back and think about it, after that event, after that game when he called them soft, from that point forward, everything he said publicly about his players, for the most part, were positives, right? He talked about them in more glowing fashion, even though they were still losing games and trying to get back into this thing and get back into that playoff spot. I think he realized that it was probably a bridge too far with this group. I know that the players were not happy with it. As far as what took place and what didn't take place, I've gotten conflicting things. I've heard the same stuff that Frank heard, and I've heard people say it's not true at all. It didn't happen. And I'm thinking to myself, well, who's trying to make who look bad with this, right? And so in that regard, I can't report it to say that it did or it didn't happen. But I do know that there were players who were not happy with how that all went down. That much I can tell you.
I can add a little bit to that, just a little bit of context to it. I used to get ticked off sometimes when I played here because Philly is a big, small town. You know what I mean? Like, I could drive out to Delco or Montco, and I'm going to know somebody that either met through the Flyers over the years or whatever. And unfortunately, what happens in this big, small town is everybody knows everybody's business. And in the sporting world now, especially with Twitter, walking into a coffee shop for as simple as a coffee, and who you bump into and the things you hear. I walk in, I don't talk to a lot of players because they know who we are here. But I've heard the same thing Anthony heard. I heard there was a leadership group that had a real blow up with Torts in the room, and they laid it at his feet. Said, we got an issue with this guy, how you treat them. And apparently that went on with the leadership group. But for me, guys, it started with the Coots thing. The timing was just so odd about making him captain, and it was like within a week you're benching the guy. I used to hate the fact that everybody knew information, but when I do walk out in the streets or I see people that I know, a lot of guys that know the players, I tend to believe that that's what happened, that there was a lot of pent-up frustration at the end of the year. The players themselves had verbally told John Tortorella that this is too much, and so much as someone saying this was a creation that you brought upon to us. This was on you. Is from what the players, what I was told that leadership meeting happened. Whether that, I don't know if it did, but I do tend to believe, because when someone would come to me and go, "Hey, I heard you were out here last night," I'm like, how the hell did he know? But he was right. And so that's what I'm saying. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And I'll be honest with you, if I really wanted to dig in, I would. But I just don't give a fuck enough. We know what went on all year. All you do is watch the games, listen to the post-game pressers, and you see what you've got your hands on. That's it. It was a horrible, hideous ending to the year, and unfortunately, it took a lot of the shine off of what had been on the entire year, because we did. Torts did do a good job getting guys to play hard. Guys responded well to him. Coots was a huge part of them getting there. But again, you can do it for 68 games. But you got to do it for 82, and you got to be tight as a group, and you can't have that separation between coach and player. So one thing we were told, though, guys, with 3 games left, we were told by Hilferty, with 3 or 4 games left, the coach will be back. Everybody will be back, and so we knew that before the season had even ended.
Yeah, there was another interesting element to this, though, and it does come back to the captain. Since we last recorded, he switched agents, which is interesting because he didn't just switch to an agent. He switched to probably the biggest agent in the game, and he doesn't have a contract coming up. So one would think that it's not for financial reasons. It happens to be the same agent as the GM, Danny Briere. So there was obviously speculation of, Is this him trying to get on better terms from a communication standpoint through his agent? Could this perhaps signal that he's not happy with how things went and that he could look to request a trade? Would the Flyers even entertain a trade? Let's have that conversation, because it was an odd move, I would say. The timing of it was a little bit strange that Sean Couturier changed agents to a real power broker. And give people some context.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a lot of context there other than the fact that you got to remember. His former agent was a very, very close friend of the family. And as a result of that, he was, he stuck with the guy. The guy's dad was an agent. And the guy's dad died, and so he the son took over the agency, and Couturier was his only NHL player. But he was loyal to him, very loyal to the family, et cetera, et cetera. And it got to a point, obviously, in the season when you have Coots makes his comments about not having great communication with the coach, and then I guess it was Kevin Kurz's story, I believe, that if I remember correctly, that was that it contacted the agent. The agent made some comments in that story, and that kind of made things maybe a little bit more difficult communication-wise within the organization. And so I think part of it is that, hey, maybe it's time to go to an agent that will create better communication. And so he goes to Danny's agent. Now, let's be very clear. The relationship that you have with Danny Briere and Sean Couturier is unique and different than most GM player relationships. Okay. These two guys lived together. Danny's kids refer to him as, Uncle Sean, right? I mean, he's that close with Danny. And so I wouldn't be surprised if some of these conversations were, hey, maybe this would help in a lot of ways. And so let's get him there. And so now you go with Pat Brisson, who of course is like you said, he's the big power broker in the NHL for agents. And, if you're going to, at some point, not saying it's going to be now or this summer, but if at some point you have to make a determination as to what the best course of action is in his career, him or even the Flyers determining that maybe he shouldn't be part of the future at that point, you probably want to have a guy who has relationships with all the other teams and can reach out to them and say, hey, what can we do? Where can we find a good spot for our guy here, and make it work, especially with the contract that he has. And so I think it's kind of a combination of all those things together. I don't think it's, oh my God, we got to get him. He wants out. We got to get him out. He's asking for a trade. It's none of that, right? I don't see that as being a thing.
We did just put the poll up on YouTube. You can go vote on it if you're over on YouTube.
Of course,
Will Sean Couturier request a trade? Yes
610.
632.
No, but I mean that's really what it is, right? More than anything else. And I think it's just kind of making sure that ducks are in the row. And I think that that's important for a player of his age and with a contract of his size, right? I mean, you want to have that guy who can, if necessary, talk to 30 other teams and say, hey, would this be a good fit for my guy if necessary? I think that's important. And so I don't blame Sean Couturier for doing it. It makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. And again, if he's trying to, Coots is a great guy. Like I was with him when he was 18 years old. I got to know him really well in my 14 or 15 years broadcasting, and just a stand-up guy. Like I can tell you that. Like he is a stand-up, honorable person that cares about his teammates, cares about the Philadelphia Flyers a lot. And he'll also help Danny, because he's not going to want to put Danny in a blender. Yeah. Danny's not a disruptive person. Jonesy's not either, and neither is Coots. So from that standpoint, I mean, if there's a place to go and they're going to want to try to find him somewhere, if they can find a trade, they will. But they probably got to eat some salary in it. And if it's the best thing for Sean, because I still think he's got some miles left in him, just want to see him get treated with some respect, because he certainly deserves that. And he certainly deserved a lot better than he got at the end of last year for what he did the first 2/3 of the year. I know some people will balk at that, but there's no story at the end of the year if there's no Sean Couturier at the beginning. It's just not. There's no story. He ended up playing so well in so many games that he was able to kind of unify the group just enough to make it interesting.
Yeah.
So, I consider all those things. I'm sure Danny and Jonesy do too. Torts has got 2 years left on a $4 million a year contract. It's a lot of money. So, necessarily, and I know people were saying as the meltdown was happening at the end, everybody looks for somebody to blame. And the easy one was either the goalie or the coach. And some players as well. But, that's what happens. That's what happens when you've presented your organization and your fan base with a really good year and the wheels come off late the last game of the year. I mean, it's disappointing. It hurt. And it forces you to answer more negative questions and look at the positive ones from the past year.
Bob Wright over on YouTube makes a good point. Trading Coots months after being named captain makes some sense, but boy, it really looks weird trading a captain this close to naming him captain.
Correct.
And I think that was a big part of we kind of discussed this away from the show when he made the change of agents, but it was like, all right, we know that there were different thoughts behind the naming of Couturier. There are still people who contend that Briere and Jonesy tried for a while to get Couturier named captain, to get Tortorella on board with it. The version that both Jonesy and Briere said on this show is that Torts came to them one day and said, I'm ready to name him captain. Now, in fairness, we didn't press at the time of, hey, was that after you guys kind of hounded him for months to name a captain? That was not provided. It was just Torts came in one day, gave some context, and said he's ready to name him captain. It's interesting because even if there's no trade request, even if this is a big nothing burger, he changed agents, it is what it is. The optics of that, plus the naming of being a captain after the coach said he wasn't going to, plus the scratching, plus the way that some things have come out to national reporters, even our own, back and forth here about how the locker room may have felt about the end of the year and how the scratching was handled, all of that. You put all those things together, and it is a little bit concerning. I think that, from an optics standpoint, we can say that it's at least a little bit concerning. It's a little bit weird. I will ask the question, are we seeing, between what happened with Gauthier, between what may happen here with Kosov, which we don't know, between what has happened here with the scratching, the naming of the captain, the rumors that have come out, the switching of agents, are we seeing a little bit of that lack of experience with the front office? They didn't let the Gauthier thing get out ahead of time. There were no leaks around the Fedotov thing, but there are people asking in the comments here, and there has been some speculation. Are some of these things just, there are things that happen around a relatively inexperienced front office?
I would say this goes to show just how bad things were before these guys took over. And there's still some cleanup that needs to get done. And they haven't quite gotten as far as they need to go. And to their credit, Keith Jones came on our show at the Carnival and said pretty much the same thing. Hey, this is great. Look at everything that has been going on here. Look at all the fans that have come back, and it's awesome. But we still have a long way to go. And I think that's when he says something like that. That's what he's saying. He's not saying that we're still got a long way to go as far as the players and development and stuff. Yeah, that's included, but it's more than that. It's repairing some damages that were left from the previous regimes that were in place. And I think that's more of what he's talking about. And so, some of this stuff needs to be cleaned up. There's no question. Look, the Cutter Gauthier thing was allowed to happen prior to these guys kind of taking over. There was probably things that were said one way, and then new people came in. It's like, well, I don't necessarily know if we're going to look at it that way. And then you have all these other outside factors that kind of come in as to be influential with that kid, and he decides, you know what, I'm gonna be a little bit full of myself, and I'm gonna stand my ground and say this is what I want, right, and get it. And he didn't get it, and so they had to deal with that. And they dealt with 9 months of that kid not even talking to the organization as much as they tried. So, you know, do you sit there and blame inexperience for that? I mean, they sent multiple people to go try and talk to him and couldn't get it done.
They couldn't get John LeClaire to do it.
Right? I mean, I don't know if that's.
Cutter Gauthier half the fucking player LeClaire is, then Anaheim's done a good job.
Yeah. I don't think it's just like I can't put that on inexperience, and so a lot of these things that maybe are coming up are still part of getting out from under what there was there before, and it was a total mess. It doesn't mean that they can't create their own messes. There certainly can. I mean, they're not immune to being wrong. I mean, they certainly can, but it's hard to kind of sit here and start pointing fingers at the new leadership when they still haven't been able to get out from under mistakes of the old leadership. So that's what I think it is.
Well, there's a lot of people pulling on the rope to help. I know that we've been a huge part of it, for messaging for the team. But listen, one thing that was sure, guys, the building the last game of the year was pretty much full. And there was a lot of positive energy through the course of the year. I want to see that continue, but I want to see guys continue to develop, get better, take another step forward. Again, when I look at the coaches, my only issue I can deal with all that stuff. I've had a loudmouth coach before, a couple of them where they just scream the whole game. I could live with that because you can just turn around and tell the coach to fuck off when he's back there screaming the whole time. But the problem is that my issue is it hasn't changed. Free agency, when you're ready to get the free agency in here, that's where a rumor of a coach and pending problems in a locker room become an issue on the ears of the free agent. And so that's the one thing they got to guard against. Maybe they say to themselves, you know what, we're going to let Torts take it over for another 2 years, and these guys will learn a valuable lesson from them, how to be tough. Maybe that's it, how to deal with all the crap. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I don't think the pro sports is like that much anymore. But there was a lot. They did have pretty decent results when things were moving in a straight line this year. The other thing, and I know we shift really quick to the league. When I look at some of the teams and the level of the play in some of the games, and then I try to take the Flyers at their very best, they'd be swept in a playoff series against some of the teams that are there. There's just another level, another gear that they've taken it to. Teams like Dallas, Colorado, even Vegas in the first. I mean, it's been intense. A lot of the Florida-Boston series, it's been vicious. Toronto. So I always say, like, when I look around the league, it just shows you, when you say you have a long way to go, the Flyers have a long way to go to get to where the level of some of these other teams are. So that'll be interesting. Thoughts on the playoffs, guys? I think it's been good. It feels like it's draggy for some reason this year. I don't know.
Hurricanes are.
They're gonna
go to Game 7.
I think they're gonna win the series. Yeah, I'm gonna go with it because the Rangers' last game to me looked like they shit their pants in real time, and they couldn't do anything about Carolina. And it almost felt like right now, if you reverse what the series was, it probably should be 3-2 Carolina instead of 3-2 Rangers. But I really don't think that. I think this is going to make it interesting, and I hope Carolina wins today because I think New York. Oh man, that would just be a beautiful thing to see them squander a fucking Game 7 after being up 3-0 in the Garden. That would just be gorgeous to see. But it's been interesting. Edmonton, I know we had I know we were talking about our thing. We're not doing very well, I guess, in our fantasy stuff, but playoffs have been fun, and it just shows me so much sometimes how far the Flyers have to go, or even other teams that are trying to get up to the level of the 8 teams that are left now.
By the way, Bundy, so right now DraftKings has the Hurricanes as a +200 to win the series. They're favorite, I believe, to win tonight, but +200 to win that series, which makes them, they're not that far off. They're not that far off from the others. The biggest underdog right now to win their series is Boston, but they're down 3-2. But
that's another one. I don't think they're going to come back. I think they're going to lose, but I have a feeling like Carolina, after that, they just plowed the Rangers the other day and ran right through them. Vancouver and Edmonton's really interesting series. It's hard to pick any kind of game or predict it, You don't know who's going to win. I mean, so from that standpoint, it's been really, really entertaining hockey. And I do feel like maybe outside of Winnipeg, who's in there, I do feel like the best 8 teams are the last 8 teams remaining in the league. So it's been good stuff.
Yeah, it really has. I still think that the 2 best teams remain Dallas and Florida. But I give Boston credit for hanging in. I give Colorado credit for having a nice offensive game against that tough Dallas defensive team in their last game to kind of hang in. The Edmonton-Vancouver series is the one that's kind of got me a little perplexed. Like there was something about Vancouver that I just didn't love, and I kind of thought Edmonton had a nice path there. But then they won a game. They changed goalies. They put in Cal Pickard, and I was like, "Are you serious? You're going to try and win a playoff game with Cal Pickard?" And it worked, right?
You almost shut him out.
Yeah, I know, it was crazy. So like I don't even know where to go with that. I still think Edmonton wins that series, but I really don't. That's the one that I'm kind of like, I don't know where this is going from game to game. But I do still think Dallas and Florida are the 2 best teams, and ultimately will be the teams that are playing for the cup.
Yeah, we said Dallas. Dallas was my pick, I think, to win the cup when we did the last. And they've they had that they've battled some adversity. They came back at
Vegas
down 2-0. To Vegas, which is no easy task, staring down the champs. So they've really done a good job. They look like a team that's in gear right now. Florida does too. Something's weird with Florida. The whole Bennett thing.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't know. It almost feels like they're trying to be the big bully on the block, and maybe they are. But I almost feel like somebody's waiting to punch them right back. And Boston is a lot like the Flyers, right? In that lore, like you can't take shit. A playoff series, and no one's going to do that to us. But Florida's done that to Boston. And then you have the coach coming out after the game. I mean, it's embarrassing. I know they've been screwed over. Like Marchand did get sucker punched by Bennett. Bennett did cross-check the guy into the net, but do something in the game. You can't come out whining after every hockey game.
Yeah.
I actually do want to go to something that is important in the playoffs right now, and Bundy, this actually kind of falls into your day job and the great work that you do. But Valeri Nichushkin put in stage 3 of the program for controlled substances, I guess, right? Second year that this has happened to him. It seems like Colorado as a locker room has effectively turned on the guy. That they I don't want to frame it in a
I know what you're saying
in a very black and white way, but it does feel like there's not a lot of compassion coming out of that locker room. And that it seems to be like they're just ready to be done with him. And when somebody's struggling with addiction, one would think that it's better to have the support of the people that you spend so much time with. I guess, one, are you surprised that it seems like Colorado's taken that stance? And 2, what's the protocol now? Like, what is the procedure? Like, this is clearly the guy has a legitimate issue to go into the program multiple times now. And he's out for 6 months, by the way. He's suspended 6 months and has to apply for reinstatement.
So I heard something the other day. Was it former Flyer Jay Rosehill? I heard a comment that he'd made where the decision was by the player to continue doing the things he was doing. I don't want to speculate. My guess is probably was cocaine. I don't know that. That's what I'd heard. So the rumor mill over the years. Doesn't matter. A drug is a drug is a drug. And if you've had an issue with it, that could be a real problem. Cocaine is actually a problem in pro sports. It is. I don't know if people know that or even want to hear it. The reason for that is there's been a taboo on drinking. Drinking's bad. When I played, I probably caught the end of the drinking era of the sport because it was culturally acceptable. And there was a handful of guys like myself that got carried away with it, and we drank too often, too much, and you developed a problem. And I've owned that. I've come back and I've shared my story. My issue with the league is this, in a situation like Nichushkin. He's got a problem, and it's probably been brought up many times, more than just the 2 or 3 that he's dealing with. It's probably been behind doors like, we need you to be a good player for us. We need you to win. And his refusal to stop is frustrating to other people on the team because they're looking at it as a business model, right? That he's helps their team. The problem is they're not looking at it as a human model on the other side. And you know what? I didn't either till I got into this, until I saw people struggling, and I can reflect back at my own struggles at how shitty and painful it was. The NHL and the NHL Alumni Association, the Players Association, all of it, they do a good job getting people placed away for 30 days to get you off the sauce or the drugs or whatever else it is. The problem is they have no aftercare. So if you come out, that's what I handle. I do aftercare. It's not living behind the walls of a beautiful rehab where you got a fucking pool and it's gorgeous and it's like a vacation where you're learning to stay sober. The same thing is when you're doing when you come out after and you got to drive by the same liquor store that you were used to going to for 10 years, or your drug dealer on the corner that you used to pass by every other night. I don't blame the kid. I feel bad for him. He's got a problem. And I wish he knew, like where I'm at right now, that there's another way. But good luck trying to tell a young, wealthy kid that there's another way. And unfortunately, the only way you can do it is to live with the experience and share the wisdom of it afterwards. But no, I don't like the fact that they turned on him. I've been there, and I turned on myself. Like I hated me for it. So I always tell guys, like, just be careful because you don't know what that person's going through. And from someone that maybe always didn't live in that moment, be kind, because you don't know. You don't know how that's impacting the player, because he might be saying he needs it, or he psychologically feels he needs whatever it is, drink and drug, whatever. And that's the part for me where they take an excess penalty rather than trying to get someone to give him maybe the hand-to-hand help they need. I will say one last thing. Until the NHL, I've asked them on here, I've reached out to people. Nobody does anything. Send this video to the league. Let them know there's guys out there like myself. There's other people that are wanting and willing to lend a hand to former brethren. You're not going to do it with a 25-year-old clinician. It's not going to resonate with a player. The only way it's going to work is hearing another person that's been through the shit. And believe me, the NHL's got loads of us, legions of us that are sober. And so I implore the league, and I tell the league, the Players Association, the Alumni Association, let's fix this. There's a better way than this. And until someone listens and has the balls to stand up and do the right thing rather than the politically correct thing, guys are going to keep fucking going back. How many times this year, and I'll stop with this. Sorry, guys, I don't want to go off the rails too much.
You are well within your right to go.
Did you see a guy was put into the NHL program? I saw it more this year than any other year.
Mm-hmm.
So guys are struggling. There's something going on. I've been there chasing it, in the league many years, and it doesn't get easier. But I'll tell you one thing: the addiction's not just going to go away on its own. It takes people, it takes a self-worth and a look at yourself, but you need others around you to do it. And you need guys like me. They need guys that go out in the NHL. I don't think they're doing a good job, and I'll say that. They need more help. They do. And there's a lot of guys I see, like Jimmy Hayes. Yeah, there's other guys. I've lost Greg Johnson, who played for Nashville. He was our first captain. He committed suicide. I played in the Olympic team with him. People have issues in the world, and it's getting through them. Like, I'm lucky. I'm a lucky one, man. Like, I really am. And I got 13 years, and I can't imagine ever going back to that piss because it ruined my life, and it was trying to destroy it at the end of the day. I got everything back, and I moved forward. But the NHL, if you're hearing me or listening, there's guys out here, myself, Fridge, Todd Fedoruk. There's loads of guys that have expressed, hey, we're here to help. Just fucking pick up the phone or reach out to us, because it's not going to make it. Nothing's going to get done unless you can actually do it from another player to player or a brethren.
Yeah, it's just kind of shocking to me that they don't seem to have a pipeline to guys like you and to Fridge available.
There's a lot of guys. I mean, I've been on,
but you would think that between the alumni, between the Players Association, the league, one would think that the easiest path to trying to get somebody help is feeling like you can identify with the person who's trying to help you. And you guys are all part of a relatively small fraternity of players, right? Of people who have played at that level. I think the big shame is he put himself into the program in January. So it's the second time in 5 months. So I just, like I said, I was a little bit surprised by the way that I think it was being framed by some people around the team. I think it's kind of a shame, but on a human level, you obviously hope that the guy's gonna finally get the help that he needs and that it's gonna stick.
But yeah, it pisses me off, Russ. It does. It upsets me because I know where that guy's been, and we hide it, right? We hide it like everyone pretends how tough they are in these big worlds of pro sports, but really down deep inside, there's somebody struggling, and it takes someone else to know that and understand it. And that's why I share my struggles, man. I was hurting. It sucked. I didn't ask for this, but I got it. And hopefully that because I got it, somebody else will have a chance when they hear what I went through.
Yeah.
Anyway, they need to be better and they need to do better. The league.
Agreed. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to get to today on our first show in three-ish weeks, 3+ weeks? Ant has a baseball game to cover here shortly, but
it's only been 3 weeks. Not even.
Yeah.
Just shy of 3 weeks.
No, it has to be 3 because YouTube says 3 weeks ago is when the last episode went up.
Well,
what was the date of the fantasy draft?
It was 3. It would have been 3. It was 24 days ago. All right, so
was it that long ago?
Yeah,
we were there on a Monday night. Remember? Yeah, Monday night. Yeah,
I know it was a Monday night, but I didn't remember it being that long ago.
Well, you know what? Like I said to you at the start of the show, a lot of people were clamoring for their fix to Snow the Goalie, and we are here, and we're happy to be back with people.
Good thing Anthony's got the hair out of his ear; he can hear now.
I know. You know what? Hey, you know what else you noticed though? No big over the ear guys today. He just has the little ones. He's showing off the.
So there's a reason for that too.
Did you break the big ones? Because you on Crossing Broadcast earlier, you didn't have the big ones either. What's going on?
I did break the big ones. I don't know what I did. It's kind of they just started zotzing out like in mid podcast and be like, I can't hear what the hell is being said to me. And so then I would play around with it and then eventually just stop working. I said, well, I guess we're going to with the little ones now.
Who's on the hill tonight, Ant? Who's on the mound tonight for the Phils?
Taijuan Walker.
Jeez, I was having a nice night.
Yeah, Taijuan Walker tonight for the Phils. Jose Quintana for the New York Mets.
How long will it take until the Phillies realize that Spencer Turnbull is a better option and they launch Taijuan Walker into the sun? Will it happen?
Well, I don't know if they're going to launch him into the sun, but I think that Turnbull will be back within a couple of weeks. I kind of think that's coming. I think that they're going to find a way to get him back in the rotation.
All right, that's it for baseball talk.
All right, good job. You guys want to talk Sixers? No? Okay. Hey, Bundy, you're the Eagles season ticket holder. Did you look at the schedule? Did you come up with how many wins you think they're going to have?
I'm a season ticket holder. Yeah, I love going down. I don't know. It'll just depend what happens. I think we'll see a little bit in camp. Losing some of those veterans, we'll see what it does. But I'm excited. They got pretty good, couple good defensive backs. I'm excited about. I hate that Brazil thing. That is the worst. I mean, that is just
starting the season in Brazil.
Just horrible. So yeah. I know people are probably pissed. Like, oh well, they're trying to grow why are we trying to grow the game down there? Like, I know that there's. All right. Good job today, guys.
Your audio cut out, so it's almost like your mic knew that whatever you were saying was going to be so bad.
I didn't say anything. I just cut myself off. I'm just like, whatever. Okay. All right. Have fun in Brazil. Good job.
Yeah, that's something like that. All right. Hey, a big thank you to everybody who tuned into the show on YouTube, Instagram Live, Facebook, X. We'll call it X. We love X. But a big thank you to everybody who tuned in live, and a big thank you to everybody who ends up listening after the fact in the podcast feed, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. If you haven't done so already, for the love of all things that are good in this world, this will help Ant's hair grow back faster, all right? Go over to Apple Podcasts. Leave a 5-star rating. That's great, but leave a review, all right? Put some words down about how much you love the show, how much you hate the show. It doesn't matter. We'll read it either way. We want the 5-star reviews. We're going to start requesting the 5-star reviews again. If you like watching the show on YouTube, please hit that like button. It is huge. It really does help us. It helps the show get more eyes on it. We announced this at the end of the season, but we have re-upped with the Flyers for another year of the partnership. We had a meeting with them once already. It was like an interesting-ish kind of meeting, and I think there's more that we could do. I express that. I think that there's more stuff that we can do with them. We'll see if it happens or not. They proposed some things. I think some of the things are good. I think that there are other things that we could do that will be even better.
I'm not saying this is a question. I got a question for you, and I don't know.
Yeah.
But who's the first organization in all of pro sports that will have the balls to actually put a podcast as a play-by-play and the call of it? I wonder if that'll ever happen in sports at all, like for a live action, fast paced sport. Because I tell you what, you could do it. It would be unbelievable watch.
I mean, in theory, if we really wanted to, we could do it for away games. There's nothing to stop us. In theory,
Okay.
we could.
I don't want to expand upon it.
We could do watch-alongs, and like in theory, we could. There's nothing to preclude us from doing it. As Ant just stares at his phone and doesn't respond.
I'm answering a text message. What do you want me to do?
Don't answer the text message during the show. Jeez,
I thought we were. I thought we were wrapping this up. You said we were wrapping it up, and now all of a sudden you're back in the conversation again.
Ant is just. You know what, Anthony? I hope you enjoyed the Phillies game tonight. I think Ant's getting indigestion just knowing what's to come with Taijuan Walker. We will be back soon. I don't want to make a promise of when we'll be back. It might be next week. It might be 2 weeks. I think we'll probably get back into the weekly cadence. The one thing I will tell you is we have never tried to fabricate or create something out of nothing. So I don't want to tell people that, like, absolutely we'll be back in a week. If nothing happens, we're not going to just, like, try to come up with something to talk about for the sake of making an episode. There are other people whose jobs are to create content around the Flyers every day. Kudos to them. Tip of the cap. I don't know how they do it, but they do. We aren't necessarily going to do that. There are some things, like I mentioned, that we're going to be doing a little bit later on in the summer that are going to be interesting that we didn't do last year. And we'll see about the next few weeks. But if you haven't done so, follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe on YouTube. We have a best of episode coming from the Press Row show that intern Andrew put together. So that'll probably drop in the feed at some point early next week. So you can keep an eye out for that.
It's very funny.
It is good. He did a really nice job.
Intern Andrew did a great job on that.
So I think what we'll do is if there's a week that we know we're not going to do an episode, that's when we'll drop it. So if we decide as a collective that, like, hey, there's nothing to talk about this week or we can't line our schedules up, that's what'll happen. But thank you to everybody who tuned in. Thank you to everybody who subscribes. We will talk to all of you next week, the week after. Keep your eyes peeled. A big thank you from all of us here at Snow the Goalie. Until the next time we speak, that's Ant, Bundy, I'm Russ. Thanks for listening to, maybe even watching, Snow the Goalie, the Only Flyers podcast. Talk to you soon.